Installing SQL Server 2016 is a pretty straightforward process, but there are a couple of places where you have to make some pretty important decisions. In this video, we're going to go through step by step what you need to do to install SQL Server 2016. Now, we're going to start off with locating the ISO that we downloaded from Microsoft's website. Now, earlier in the course, we went through how to actually get this free copy of SQL Server 2016. So you went out there and you downloaded the ISO for either SQL Server 2016 Developer or the Evaluation Edition. And as you can see here on the graphic, I downloaded the SQL Server 2016 Developer ISO. And so I'm ready to use that now to install SQL Server. So what I'm going to do is right click on this and choose Mount. If you're working with an operating system that doesn't give you this, then just burn this ISO image to a DVD, put the DVD in the drive, and then you'll be in the same place where we are next. You will be looking at something similar to this. If you right click and mount it, it's also going to look like it's in a DVD drive, as you can see here as well. So what we want to do is just in that list of files that are extracted when you expand that ISO, locate the setup.exe file. You see it highlighted in blue there. Just right click on that, and I'll always right click and choose Run as Administrator. It takes care of permissions issues, it takes care of UAC pop-ups and so forth. Then after that, now this is one of the surprising things about SQL Server 2016. So you right click and you kick off the setup executable, and for 15 or 20 seconds, it's as if you've done nothing. Your machine doesn't click or hum, it just kind of sits there and stares back at you, and just wait it out. And in a few seconds, you're going to see this notification box appear right in the middle of the screen. It'll say, please wait while SQL Server 2016 setup processes the current operation. At some point in the next few seconds, the main installation interface will appear. Now, I want you to notice there's a lot of things going on here, and this is a great resource in and of itself. If you'll notice, on the left side of this interface, there's actually menu options. Notice planning, installation, maintenance, tools, resources, advanced. I would strongly encourage you to click on every one of these and just familiarize yourself with some of the options out there. Every time you click on an option on the left, all the detailed options on the right that you see are blue and hyperlinks there will change, and there's a lot of cool things here. We are going to click on installation because we want to install SQL Server 2016. Notice as soon as we clicked on installation, we got a whole new list of items on the right side. At the very top, we can click this hypertext link to install a new SQL Server standalone installation or add features to an existing installation. So if you ever want to come back in and add some functionality to SQL Server that you didn't originally install, this is where you would go. Notice, by the way, on every page, the other links that you see, the second one down there, Install SQL Server Management Tools, we'll revisit that later in the course. Install SQL Server Data Tools if you want to do any kind of business intelligence stuff, if you want to do reporting services, those sorts of things, you would install SQL Server Data Tools. And then, as you see, you can work with failover cluster installations, adding a node to failover clusters, upgrading from previous version or the new R server standalone. If you know what that is, good. If not, we'll get to it later. We're going to click on this top one, a new SQL Server standalone installation. And the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to perform kind of general scan of your machine to make sure that it sees that all the most basic prerequisites are in existence on your machine. It's rare to get errors here, but if you do, just kind of work through them. You'll get hypertext links that'll explain what's going on. You may have to go out and install something, but if you're on Windows Update, generally most of the things that you need have already been dropped down by Windows Update, and you're going to be just fine. So just check those issues, resolve them, and then continue. If you get a clear shot here, just click Next to continue. And then the installation will check online for any updates to the SQL Server 2016 platform that were not included in the ISO that you downloaded. And so you can just check. Notice there were no updates for my particular machine, so just click Next to continue. Then installation files get extracted and are prepared. Now this will take anywhere from just a few seconds to maybe 2 or 3 minutes, depending on your machine. So notice it's going to scan for product updates. It's going to download setup files, extract them, and install them. And when that's done, you just kind of sit and watch it, and it'll tell you that it's done. And the next button will become available. It'll become active. Click on that to continue. Next up, we get some install rules now. we've got a little more information to work with the files that have been extracted. Notice it performs a series of tests: Fusion Active Template Library, consistency validation for registry keys, on and on and on. And it's going to give you some information. Notice on mine, I got a warning about the Windows firewall. You will probably see this one as well. This is just saying that I don't have a port open that's going to allow remote people to connect to this SQL Server. That's not important in this environment. We're all going to work right on our own local machine, so that's not a problem. Next up, you're going to see the product key screen appear, but since we're using developer or evaluation edition, we don't have a product key to input. We don't have to worry with this. We just simply click next. Then you see everybody's favorite, the license term screen. And with this, you have an opportunity to read the Microsoft software license terms. If you haven't read this, I would strongly encourage you to read this. You are expected to follow this, and it can be some expensive legal ramifications if you don't. Notice you can copy or print it. The bottom line is you're going to have to check it to be able to install. If you don't check it, it's going to stop the installation and kick you out. So click next to continue after you've consulted the license terms. And this is where it starts to get interesting. The feature selection page appears. Now, what we're going to do is just check the database engine services. I would strongly encourage you to review this list and see all the things that are there. You'll notice down there we've got analysis services. This is for building the data cubes and tabular data modeling, those sorts of things. Fascinating stuff. Then there's reporting services, and you can just kind of scroll up and down that list. But just for now, make sure you've checked database engine services. And then notice in the bottom portion of this dialog box, you can change your file locations or where this is going to be installed. If you know why, know where you want to put it, go for it. Otherwise, for the purposes of our time together here, just leave it at the default location. Click next to continue. The instance configuration page appears. This is another important one. It is going to set the instance name of your SQL Server. Now, you can install SQL Server on a machine, and notice this one is going to set up as a default instance. This means it checked there was no other version of SQL Server on your computer. This is the first one, so this will be the default instance, and it will share the name that your computer has. And so you'll notice down here in this next box, that's the instance ID. So it's going to be a default instance. This is the first one, and the name that this SQL Server is going to have that you'll use to connect to it is MS SQL Server. You can change it right here if you would like. Just make sure you remember what it is, because you will have to have that to change it. You also could see this little box right here lit up, and this is the named instance. Now, SQL Server can be installed multiple times on a single physical machine. So we can go through this installation, create a default instance, and then when it's done, we can restart the machine, put our installation media right back into the machine, and install a total separate instance of SQL Server. The first one will be the default instance. This next one is a named instance, and all it's saying is, hey, I've got two separate SQL servers running on this machine, and I need to be able to distinguish between them. So on this named instance, give me a new unique name that doesn't match the other one. So if you see this named instance, it just means you have an earlier version of SQL Server. You're going to have to name this one. There is some difference in connecting. We'll touch on that later. Now, the server configuration page appears next. This is important in the real world. We're not going to mess with it right here, but notice for every one of our SQL Server services that are involved in this installation that we're doing, you see these service accounts that are going to be running for that particular service. There's a lot of information out there on the net and on Microsoft's site about how you should configure these and what you should run them under. You can even get a group of administrators in a room, watch a fight break out over this issue. But for now, we're going to leave this alone. But if you wanted to change anything about the accounts that these services run under, this is where you would do it. We'll just click next and accept the defaults. Another big one, the database engine configuration page is up next. And so with this one, we're going to choose Windows Authentication Mode. We'll play with that later and talk about those. And then at the bottom, after Windows Authentication Mode, we want to specify which accounts are going to serve as SQL Server administrators and have full permissions. We're going to click on the Add Current User box. Click Next. Now we get the Ready to Install page appears. We just click Install, verify the features that we've chosen, and we just kind of sit back and watch for a little while. The progress page appears. The little green bar is going to paint across a few hundred times. And at some point, after maybe 10, 15 minutes on most machines that I've worked with, the installation will complete and you're going to get this installation completed successfully with product updates or whatever is unique to yours. And you'll see the green check marks. And at this point, we can assume that we have successfully installed SQL Server 2016. Now we got a little bit more work to do. We'll cover those in separate videos.